on, everybody, and welcome back to the Good Day Matrix. My name is Daz, and I am very proudly here today with the amazing Kale Panoho. He is the kind of guy that gives me deep faith and hope that you can still be a portfolio person and do a few different things at the same time and achieve in all areas and not just have to focus in one lane. And I just think that's absolutely a magical message for all of us. He's the partner of K&J Growth, partner of Rugby Bricks, and founder of Hakune. Kale is also the advisor for Central Fitness Cromwell, which I think is amazing. Just another thing on that list. Kale is on the Forbes Communications Council, and he's a contributing writer for Huffington Post and for Thrive Global. What I have to add here, and what I just adore about Kale, is that he does everything with heart and kindness. And if I've ever asked for help or needed anything, he's the first to have happily jumped in to help me or offer advice and just be there as a guide and a support. And I think he does that for a lot of small businesses, and he just does it with a big smile on his face and is very welcoming. So very grateful for you, Kale, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's an incredible intro. So I should get you to do more of those for me.
Well, I think you must take care of your wellness pretty friggin' well for all the things that you're doing and still continue to do and drive for. So that's why I'm so excited for this chat today, just to see the little life hacks that you're putting in place that one of those things might work for somebody else. And that's what we're trying to inspire. So we'll start with body and we'll just go through our 5 pillars and see where we end up.
Awesome. All
cool.
right.
All right. So body. So what activities or daily rituals can you not live without? What do you put in place to take care of your body?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty rigid for a lot of people. And I think one of the quotes that I'm a big fan of is, you fall to the level of your training. And so a lot of the stuff that I do is relatively routine. So first thing, waking up, is I'll step outside, try and get some natural sunlight, at least have a look and get some form of protocol to at least get some form of waking on board. And so there's a bit of science behind that, and obviously just getting your eyes adjusted to sort of where you are. The next piece is meditation. So the app that I use is called Waking Up by Sam Harris. And so really great app. I just use a daily meditation on that, and that's a really useful piece. The next sort of 45 minutes is hanging out with my partner. She's a doctor, and so her job is inherently much harder than mine and a lot more stressful. And so most of the time it's grabbing a coffee, having some breakfast with her. I don't eat, I fast, but I'll hang out with her, make sure she's ready, then drop her off down at the hospital, or we walk down. And then coming back into it, I've got a few other key protocols, which is one, I have my coffee around about 90 minutes after waking, and there's a little bit of science around that. And the second is a cold shower. So that's sort of how I start the day. And that's the sort of the piece that just doesn't change. It's very, very, very ingrained.
Yeah.
And it's a key piece to allow me to sort of say, okay, cool. I've at least got those few things right as I go into the day. And I know for the most of it, at least, that if things go south or have been pretty rough, then I've got some pretty strong fundamental pillars at the start of it.
And a cold shower in the South Island. That's an outstanding commitment you make.
Yeah, I did throughout February. And so I did from December to February, just every day a cold shower. And it's not too bad when it's warm, but I've kept it going through now. And even these first few days of March have been horrific. So
yeah, I respect it. That's probably not going to be one of the things that I pick up from you today, but
it's certainly one of those things that just gets you up and you've just gets that alertness going. And again, a few other things like obviously norepinephrine or adrenaline for other people. It's just, you get that natural shock where your body has to sort of respond, and then you get that alertness that follows. Epic.
And all those things that you've talked about, like, because you travel a lot, obviously, with what you do, that can actually be picked up and moved anywhere. That's not kind of, geographically specific, which is pretty cool. But is there anything you do with all the travel you do to ensure that you keep that going? Because I'm imagining you're dealing with different time zones also, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's a really good point. I'm off to the States on Monday. So flying into LA, which will be, it's nice. But again, it's those similar things that first 90 minutes is sort of a non-negotiable. So my calendar's not accessible. No one can sort of get a hold of me. The phone isn't on till probably 10 a.m. each day. And so it's on airplane mode and that sort of thing. So until those things are done, and the meditation, like I do through an iPad, so I don't have to use my cell phone, is just key pieces so that I'm not getting smashed from other stuff. Because as soon as I let one thing in, then I just slip and let everything else in.
It's like a waterfall, like a dam, like one thing, and it's like, totally all over.
and it's probably the thing there, like as we get into this with devices, like I just have a very strong, I'm adverse to obviously having them on. And that's the key piece there, is that a lot of that stuff, if I had a device, I'm pretty sure like I don't have the willpower to not be reactive or on it. So I just don't have it on. There's that concept, which, and if anyone who's read the book, a lot of this stuff I get from something called Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Yeah.
But there's a concept in there by a psychologist called Sophie Leroy. She talks about attention residue. So if I switch to a task, or if I go into this and I get a text, you've got this residue of the thing that you've just looked at that then fades into the following conversation. And so you lose the ability to, one, concentrate on what we're doing, but two, you've got this residual thought pattern that then takes up and reduces your cognitive ability to be on or chat and have any of these discussions.
I hope there's a lot of penny drops as people are watching this right now, because it's the stuff. Those are those moments where we don't realize how much it impedes or, impacts our life and the interactions that we have in the relationships. All right, so we'll move into mind, and I believe you have quite the amazing mind. And again, that's down to all those different channels that you're running and all those different things that you're doing, but doing them all really, really well. So how do you keep your mind? And I think you've just given us a really good start of your 90 minutes of the day, but also understanding what distracts you and what to keep away to be focused. But how do you keep your mind in that sort of creative state, or how do you give yourself space to be doing the visionary work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I am one of those people that just don't believe in multitasking. So I don't think it's a skill. I don't actually believe that it can be useful, and I avoid it at all costs. So to get to that point is I have to be able to focus on one thing and do it really well. And I'm better than to do multiple things, averagely. And so for me, a lot of what I do is removing or avoiding distraction. And so my mind, when I think about it, is we sub-vocalize all the time. So all of us have got this current of chatter in our head. How am I perceived? What do I look like when I'm doing this? How do people think about me? All of that thing, we do that every day. And so the first one's meditation, right? Where you can focus and sort of say, okay, cool. Can I get to a point where I'm at least noticing my emotions? Because that's the first piece. If you can't have this piece where you're actually able to listen to that monologue and get your mind right, then you're screwed, because ultimately you're going to be pulled and swayed in multiple different directions. And it's a really abstract way for people to think about this, but ultimately just think of another voice that's in your head, but you want that to be the most supportive and useful thing as opposed to something that's detrimental. And so meditation is a good way to train that form of sub-vocalization so that it's not pulling you in multiple places. And that's the first piece where I look at it, is to get that right and get that sorted. So I meditate first thing in the morning, is because I'm just literally like, it's when I wake up, it's gibberish. Like the amount of crap that I think of, like I just have no way to like look at it. And so I've got the thoughts from yesterday, everything that I want to do. And so meditation is a quick way to get that and get it sorted. The next piece is just journaling. So after I've done that in that first 90 minutes, when I come into my day, what I'll do is I'll look at my calendar, and then all the crap that I'm going through, where this just sort of, my brain is on trend, I just write it down. And literally, like, these are just random notes. Like, I'll go back to some of them and I can look at some of the stuff this morning. I looked at Spire, potential client, what an Airbnb, how would I invest, run some LinkedIn automation, what's Haro, I should buy this book, which is The Psychology of Money, what's happening at Digital Hub, and how am I going to eat lunch today, and then how should I cook dinner, when, how, and why. Like that, that's scribbled notes of things that I just brain dump. Right. And so as soon as I get that onto the paper, it's sort of gone.
Clears it.
And it feels like I'm sort of resetting. And so those two hacks are things that I do. And then the other subtle stuff is obviously, as I'm moving from task to task, well, how do I remove everything that can get a hold of me? So technology, I don't have notifications for my phone. So the only thing that can get a hold of me is phone calls.
Nice.
I have my phone on Do Not Disturb. I've got 3 people that can call me, and that's pretty much it. Slack is quit. And so there's another tool that I use on my browser called BlockSite, which is literally all of the things where I would type in a URL. Like, oh, I'm bored, I'm going to check Facebook. You Google, like, you put that in and you go through that. I literally have something that just comes up and blocks it. And so I've got a whole list of URLs like New Zealand Herald, New York Times, any of those things where I'm going to do that doom scrolling or distract myself gets immediately blocked. And then the key piece is just hanging around with people who reinforce the same messages. So who think like this, who do those same things and have those sort of thought processes. So that's for me, mind-wise. I have to get all of that stuff right, because with a couple of companies that are both growing and scaling, we've got one where there's 25 of us now, the other one where there's sort of 5 of us, and then trying to build this blog as well. It's multiple streams. And if I pay attention to too many of those things, like, I'm just going to get nothing done.
Almost compartmentalizing it, to get the focus at the moment. And I say it with the changing times of what we're all facing at the moment, but things for us, for some of the work that I do, change on a dime. Like, we have a plan, we think we're green, and then something changes and you have to be across it quickly. But in that time where you've gone, okay, I'm blocking out an hour for this, and then all of a sudden you're already out of that because you're sort of half in it but half not, and you go, no, you know what, I'm going to park that, I'm going to finish this, and then I'll come back. But you're right, that residual, it doesn't leave. You're kind of like, oh, I've got to send 5 emails about that, and I've got to do this, and by the end of it, you're like, I didn't achieve either because I sort of overthought on one side.
And that's it. Like, a lot of these things bleed into each other. And that's the problem, is that if you've got a whole range of competing interests, then that's just by chance. Like, you're literally saying, I'm going to divide my time, not even if you're intentionally doing it, but you're dividing the cognitive capacity to work on those things. And for me, this doesn't make sense.
I'm running a journal this year too.
Oh, nice.
Say that. Mine's probably very different.
Yours looks way better than mine.
Yeah, mine's real random. So I do photos of my kids. Well, slash not my kids, but photos of like what I'm up to. So that week. So it's a week's reflection, and then I've got questions that I run each week, and some goals that I've set for myself. So implementation intentions, because I love James Clear, and just really trying to, I am a person who eat healthy lunches, or I am a person who prioritizes moving every single day, those sorts of things. But that's helped me keep on track of things quickly, instead of, going through a busy month and then at the end of the month going, oh man, I probably didn't exercise nearly half of it. But now I've got these reflection questions to check in with myself on a Sunday and go, how did last week feel? Head, heart, gut. Like, what did I notice and what can I change? And I've been able to make these 1% and like little adjustments here and there each week to nip them in the bud, and particularly attitude, right? Again, at the moment, everything's changing all the time, and you could get down the dumps or frustrated, or, see a certain person calling you and be like, energy suck. And so you go, no, actually that's not my life. That's not who I want to be. So what do I need to do? That's a conversation I need to go have. So I'll go have that conversation so that the following week is different. So journaling is really powerful if you make sure it works for you and you're not doing what someone else does and think that's going to work for you. It's got to, hone it in.
And that's it. That's why, like, my journaling is not, it's literally, like, I say journaling, but it's a brain dump of horrific words. Like,
you'll look back on it though, and some of those trigger points will come out there, right? It may not have been ready for you at that stage, but it will be the thing, can be later that.
That's it. And it's the same thing when I'm having a lack of sleep or not getting my sleep sorted, as I'll do the same stuff. And so there's a whole range of those sort of little hacks that you can have that help. But I think, ultimately all of this stuff is that we've only got a limited cognitive capacity. And we have a small, pretty, a finite amount of time per day to leverage that, between sort of 4.5 to sort of 6.5 hours. And if you're going to be using it and spreading it out thin across too many things, then you're setting yourself up to sort of fail on a few fronts. Yeah.
Spoken perfectly from my portfolio role model. I love it.
I like it.
So we'll move across into identity. And when we talk about identity, we talk about it being incredibly critical to know where you've come from and where your whānau have come from, and understanding that as a grounding as you move forward in your days. And I've actually just yesterday had a really amazing conversation with David Galbraith about this thing with our children, but also as adults of, my son loves mountain biking, and instead of just going, oh, cool, you like mountain biking, awesome, and sort of having half conversations, to actually go, do you know what? Your granddad really loved mountain biking, and he used to, put me on the back seat of his bike and, would go and tear around and do these things. So it links and grounds him into a history also of a passion that he holds. So tell us about your whakapapa, I guess. Tell us where you've started and what's got you to here.
Yeah, so identity is one that I think I'm still discovering, and certainly something that I'm reinventing regularly in a way that I want to, become better at certain things. So for me, I grew up in Australia, so I'm Australian. Australian Māori, born on the Gold Coast, ironically. And we moved over to New Zealand when I was 10, but I grew up with a single mum. and she was an alcoholic, and we had like a lot of time trying to decide when I was young, like what is it that I want to be. So for mum, she struggled through a lot. We had very, very low income. She was obviously someone on the benefit. And with those things, like you get a lot of, who am I? I've got a parent who shaped some of this. And then I've also got this other parent who's not here anymore. And then where do I fit in the middle of this? And so you add a bit of those things together, and then you get a parent with mental health issues. And you have to go back and sort of, there's a lot of work I did from those times to sort of redefine what and who I want to be. And then the other piece is an understanding of when someone's giving you their perspective at that stage of their lives from 0 to 18, that person is giving you their view of the world, but their view of the world's pretty skewed, right? If you want to look at like ideally who you want to be, and a parent's not that person, but you've only got their viewpoint, then the world is a very, very different place. And so when I think of what your identity is establishing some key guidelines that looks like success for you in the future, right? Most of us identify success with wealth, and it's a good thing to chase. I think it helps, and it puts you in a position because preferentially having more money, it solves your money problems, but money problems shouldn't also help you solve some other quick ones like how to eat well, how to live well, and then how to educate yourself. And so the key part when I look at my identity was I had a lot of screw ups and had a lot of things, probably up until I was about 24, where my identity, I had it tied to what other people thought of me.
Yes.
And so coming back from there and looking at what my parents did is like, okay, cool. There's some really key things that I actually need to sort out and tackle here that will make me the person that I want to become. And a lot of that came from looking at how people spent their time. So I looked at successful people, and a lot of the key things that came out of that, they worked hard. They had said they read a lot, and then they seemed to take care of themselves. And then their lives seemed to be relatively good. And I was like, well, those seem like good foundational tenets. I already do the exercise part because that's something I had an inclination towards, and I didn't mind reading. So 2 of the boxes were really ticked. But once you do like another layer deeper is, okay, cool. Well, what does a person who does those things look like? Are they honest? What's their integrity? All of those key things. And you start to establish like these little guidelines of, oh, a hardworking person is also really honest. They keep their word. They try and do these things. And all of those habits then become things that you end up working towards. And for me, that was what I was doing from 25. It was basically building that of the person who I wanted to be. And it came from reading a lot of books. So getting to the point where that was led me to cool. Entrepreneurship seems like a really great way to spend time and how to build it, because a lot of entrepreneurs seem to have done the wealth part really well. They seem to have done the time thing, and they seem to have built a lot of the work ethic stuff. Those cascading things get a lot better, and then finding the next place with that. So for me, philosophy was a really good pace, and looking at stoicism. And those became very guiding, strong tenets for me of that's who I should be. There's some really great things here. And then trying to live most of my life in accordance with it. And then that's realistically taken me through to sort of what I do now, which is even more systematized, where I look at every 90 days, who is the person I want to be. And I've written goals that I have set out, like 90 days. So I want to be, my one is I'm working on, I want to be a modest man. And then I have a role model, a literal picture. So I've got Warren Buffett. And then what are the work ethic things that he does? And then health-wise, one of the things I was looking at post-January, like I just gained way too much weight, have been drinking too much. So I was like, sweet, I want to get down to 10% body fat or less. And then what does that look like? How do I do it? And then the other piece is like I wanted to work on my statistical foundation. So stats is something I've studied at uni. I'm doing biochemistry part-time. The piece is wanting to go through that is I want to have a really strong underlying foundation of statistics. And that's my identity for who I want to be. But all those other key foundations that led me to that point, there's a whole lot of backlog of stuff.
Yeah. That's incredible. My goodness. Stoicism, by the way, I don't know if you can see that there. It says the Daily Stoic. It's on my
nice.
I haven't done it yet. That's on my reading list to do. But yeah, he so far all the things I've read of Ryan Holiday, I love. And it's interesting you talk about people's habits, because like again, I love James Clear. I think I say it almost in every interview with his Atomic Habits and those 1%.
Yeah.
But I talked again with David, and I was saying, what does a lazy day look like for you? And he said, do you know what? When I measure myself, one of my number one values is I'm hardworking. So absolute contrast of hardworking is lazy. So I actually don't have a lazy day, but he has what's called a recovery day. So he said on a recovery day, it's a nice rainy day, and I put my wood that I chopped into my fire and I burn that to keep my family warm. I go and get meat, but it's all these things that he's worked hard for in preparation to then have his recovery day.
I really like that.
I know. And I was like, it's so true, because that's what we talk about with athletes, right? And it's what I've started to talk about with people is, you're in this idling phase where you're using energy, even just talking to me now, and you do need to replenish and recover from that to be able to go again. And instead, and that was in the first 2020 when we were just on Zoom after Zoom after Zoom, and we were, just go, thinking, we can fit so much more time, so much more stuff in here now. And then we were wondering why we were so exhausted and we had nothing left to give. And it's because we forget that, no, I'm not traveling to Auckland to go and see all these people, but it's still taxing, and I'm still, using all my energy, and I'm engaging, and I'm, so it's that kind of stuff. It's like recovery is so underrated in conversation instead of that laziness, or like, I had nothing left in the tank, so I went to bed early. Well, that's recovery. But instead of only having 4 hours sleep every day and then on the weekends doing 8, how can you start to actually look at the patterns to replenish yourself during the week, so you don't come into the weekend annihilated and come in actually with energy to give to your family or to your partners, and instead of it being like, I don't have energy for that, let's go for a walk. No.
And it's pivotal, right? Because that's the other piece. Most of my working time, I can get up to pretty late hours, but the key piece is like, the latest I'll go to is 9 p.m. because I know I'm sacrificing sleep on the other side of that. And if you don't have those are moments of replenishment, all that sort of stuff, you're essentially saying, cool, what I want to do is take myself and have myself prepared and work at 70%, right? Because every day you rob yourself of that, you're just saying, I don't want to take the day at 100%. I want to be able to perform at 70%. And every time you make those compromises, you're setting yourself up for that. And that's a really hard place that it's easier to think I can work harder, but ultimately you just need that time. And functionally, from a science point of view, you have to have it, but also from a spiritual and a mental place, like it's also got to be there too, because it's very similar to, like you said, like it was so easy in 2020 to be stuck to a screen and doom scroll. And then the other piece on that, it was obviously then being able to actually step away from it. And for me, that's, every Sunday I have my phone off. And that's the part where it's just, you can't get the contact with me, where it's, I'm turning it on, I'm airplane mode. Like I'll go online, but it's only through my laptop. And that's the decision to have it there, because ultimately, like, I know if I'm on my phone, I'm not really being present. And so if I'm coming into that day, like I'm just saying to someone else too, usually my partner, like if I'm absent from the time that we're spending together, because I'm putting my attention to my phone, just taking it away from us, right? And it's just not, if you want to live a good life, and for me, I think that there is like the absence of some of those sort of technological hooks that get us on those and stop us from replenishing to getting where we want to be.
Yeah. This so comes into love languages. I don't know if you know about love languages and stuff, but like that's the thing, right? Like my thing is time. Like I don't care about stuff. Don't give me stuff. Don't, all those different things. But time is my thing. Like if we're going to be there, don't be sitting on your phone on the couch or watching TV. Like let's play a board game or let's just chat. Like that's my thing. Other people is like physical touch and stuff. But yeah, mine is time. Just spend quality time. Doesn't have to be lots, but when we're there, like and that's why, with friends, they're always like, oh no, you're too busy, Des, don't worry about it. And I'm like, no, like I want to spend time with you. And like it's not a gift that I'm giving, but that's how I connect with people. Like sending around a text here and there's not my thing. Going and spending time with people, that's the thing that gives me joy and grounds me to keep going as well.
Knowing that too, that's very, like people don't, the other piece of all of this is a lot of people don't ask any of these questions. Many of us just have no idea what that is, right? Like, how do I actually get myself to the energy? What even a good baseline is. Yeah. Many of us are at that point where we're 6 hours of sleep, pretty gassed, and then wake up and automate most of our days. Like if you don't spend the time to think about some of this stuff, it's just very easy. The same way to build good habits is to build the inverse of it. And it's similar to what James Clear has spoken about, right? Is those habits, the same way that they work in a positive manner, they work just as well in the reverse. Hard out.
There's an interview, watch it on our site, with James Ashcroft. He's a New Zealand director. He's amazing. And he talks about, from a mental health perspective, but being able to have those conversations early before you get into the hole and before things start to get really murky and you're in that place where you actually can't have the conversation to say what you need, is to have that conversation with your loved ones long before that moment comes, so that when you can say, oh, I'm not feeling okay, he can actually use the term like forecast, and you'll say, forecast for next week is looking pretty rough. And so his wife just knows.
Yeah,
and knows.
that's cool.
There's just this thing that comes into play. And he said, my wife just keeps life steady. She knows what I need there. And he doesn't have to go, what I need from you is X, Y, and Z, because I've had that conversation. So when they're in the thick of it, she just keeps life really steady and until he comes right and can then be like, cool.
I really like that. That's a cool signal. To say, hey, it's going to be, it's beautiful. Yeah, we're going into rough waters.
Yeah.
But here's what we've prepared in the very best sense in the time.
Yeah, and that's the stuff, right? Because when we're in it, like when I'm stressed, for example, and I've got like 2,500 emails I haven't replied to, and phone calls coming every which way, and children to hang out with, like I can't actually make good decisions for myself at that point if I've gotten that far. So doing that ahead, I think, is knowing who you are, it's your identity, but it's also the people you surround yourself with, which is what you talk about, like who you surround yourself with is key. And those people knowing you well is what will get you through those things to keep driving forward. Yeah, pretty powerful.
I love it. That's cool. I'm going to steal that one.
So that moves us into community. And I joke around that community can be anything, but it's also a dead serious. It could be line dancing, it could be your book club, it could be your swimming group, knitting group, any type of community that you feel that you can contribute value to and that you feel valued in is such an important part of wellness and such a overlooked part of wellness that people often will go, I just don't have time. I don't have time to, go to pottery, or I don't have time to play netball, and those sorts of things that actually fuel us to keep going and doing the things we do, and also get outside perspective and not just doing one thing of work all the time, but actually to see the world differently. So tell us about the communities you're a part of, and tell us how you sort of choose your people that are within your community and what you look for.
Yeah, so I'm really lucky in the fact that I own a couple of companies, and so I get to make the community for the people I work with, which is a really big piece. A lot of us don't get to choose the people we work with. And so the first part is my work is an extension of sort of the community that I have outside of work. And so a quote that I'm really fond of and that I use often and pretty much in every interview is, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so that's from Jim Rohn. And typically the people that I try and spend my time around are the people who embody a lot of the things that I want to become. And when you're starting out, that usually has to be through books or digital mediums, because it's very hard to get access to those people. And that's, you know what I mean? Aspirationally, like I can't go talk to Tim Ferriss. I can't really go have a yarn with Ryan Holiday until I get to a certain point where they actually want to have as a reciprocal value, right? And a lot of that there is, for my mentors and the people that I care about and have a connection to, a lot of that actually comes from books. And so the first piece of my community is, philosophy. I read a lot and I like to think a lot. And then the second, I look for the similar stuff in other people. So, yourself, there's a huge amount of people, out there similar to us who have and share some of these values of, I want to turn up well. I want to do well for myself. I want to look after my whānau. I want to be a good human. I want to play sport, and I want to be able to give back to my community. And so when I talk to other people, I get a really quick gauge on what their priorities are. And I've got certain friends that I still hang out with, but the differences between them and the conversation I'm having with you right now is their first thing, I'm working my 9 to 5. My job's tough. I hate it. And it's like, sweet. And then there's a cascade of things that aren't going well. And you get a very clear picture that someone who's thinking about their life in that manner, but continues to complain almost about the exact same things, it's probably not someone that, if you're wanting to get better and improve, someone presents with you the exact same problem and you've said that same problem for the last 2 years, that's probably, a good indicator that it's not a community person you want to be around. And so for me, when I look at the people that I spend time with, is do they have some form of hobby that they actually enjoy and are looking for some form of mastery? And that can be drawing, art, sport, whatever that is. But typically when people are doing that sort of thing, they're really good at articulating what's getting them better. And that conversation is universal with anyone. Someone who's a really great artist can talk about how they've gotten better at their craft, and that requires the same things for you to get better at the things you care about. How do you study? How do you think? what did that look like? What did you write about today? All the questions that you've asked me, they can be asked back. Yeah. And then when you have people who are trying to get better in those things, they usually have really good answers. And so for me, that's one of the things that's like a non-negotiable in terms of having good friends is, do you have something that you're actually trying to get really, really, really good at? And a lot of our team and a lot of people that we have inside of K&J, inside of Rugby Bricks, they're all trying to get better at something really outside of work. And then the other pieces are the same things that I care about, stoic principles, honesty. How do you be someone who turns up well? How do you know what's good, what's bad, what do you pass out? All of those things I start to look for because it shows up in their actions. Yeah. And so people are quite often creatures of habit, and they'll repeat the stuff that they're either good at or bad at, but you'll get to see that on a long enough time frame.
Yeah.
And so for me, a community is those types of humans. And, like the people I spend a lot of time with, I've got a mate here, Brad Brosnan. He's a PhD, he's doing it on sleep, but the stuff that he does, he runs an e-commerce store, a Panoho store, and then he's got his PhD, and then he plays a huge amount of tennis. And then the things that he cares about, he's just had his wedding, and then he's gardening, right? Wow. That's the type of people that you get to chat to them and you get to think about how are they spending their time? How are you tackling a PhD? That's really interesting. And all those key things are just someone who's moving in the momentum and direction that I want to head with my life. So I'm going to spend time with you.
That's momentum is our word for the two businesses, for Good Day Matrix and for Live 55 for 2022 is momentum. And we've talked a lot about that definition and stuff, but that's the key is momentum. I can't tell you how many friends I've how you try and I'm a real problem solver to my detriment. So, someone's like, I'm really unhappy with my job and my boss is this and and it's the same stuff every day. And I'm like, well, what have you done to change it? And so then I start throwing things out have you had a conversation with your boss? I can't. Okay. Did you have a conversation with the person that's pissing you off? No, I can't. And you're trying to, and you do all these different angles. Surely one of these things is going to pierce you to go, you shouldn't be this unhappy every day. And that's how we spend a whole conversation. And so I slowly start to go, I've started to realize it now in myself, they're not the people that fuel me, and they're not the people, you can have problems, good gracious, we all do. And that's what we problem solve together, but you've got to be open to hear some suggestions and not just get going, no, that won't work. No. That's an awareness thing. And I'm 36. I'm probably early to finding that out compared to a lot of people I know. And I think I'm old finding that out, but actually, And
it's a very Kiwi thing to put a lot of those barriers up and just say no, no, and no. Yeah. Because the exploration and the things, these types of conversations, they appeal to a very few people. And the way it's, as humans, we follow the path of least resistance. Yeah. And so it's much easier just to say, no, I haven't explored that, because that is the easiest option. You know what I mean? And ultimately, when we look at a lot of these things that we're trying to solve for or try and get towards, is that for most people, it's actually the easiest path just to say no. So why not follow it? And that is a really big realization that I had, very probably similar 5 years ago when I was trying to look at the stuff, is that if you don't look at changing anything, then nothing changes. So you just get stuck.
And so when I talk about words of the year, so my personal one is gumption, which is not a word used very often, which is why
I saw that and I was going to ask.
And so that's determination, and it's being dogged, and it's driving for change, and being a bit tenacious and a bit cheeky in what you request, because who knows what could happen kind of stuff. And instead of just being particularly complacent, no, that's just how it is. That's how they roll. So it just is what it is. But actually what would happen if you ask the question, the worst they're going to say is no, right? So might as well give it a nudge, which is one of my little key phrases I say all the time, but I'll give it a nudge and see what happens. But if that confidence has taken a long time to build for me, and some amazing people around me to go, you don't have to make yourself small, be big, and the community of people around you, they'll stay because they're your people. That's what you're building. So that's an awearness.
And that's it. The thing is, and I really like that word, actually. I think it's a great one. Another thing I'll probably steal, but I think for most of us is we have a fear of failure, and we have the assumptions of how our peers will think about us and the judgment of them. But the people that you want to spend your time around, the ones who you want to become, they're not judging you. They're not even looking at some of the things that you care about. It's the people who are below you that are probably the ones that are going to throw stones. And so if those are the people that you are basing your opinion on, then you're only inherently going to stop taking risk and follow what the crowd does, because you're afraid to literally fail in front of them. But the people above you, they're going to tell you, great work, have a crack at it, and cool, you failed. Here's how you can get better, and it's iterative. How do you
probably say that, I failed 30 times before I cracked this one, and you're like, I don't have to do it the first time. How good.
It's the amount of things I've failed in publicly. Like, there's so many businesses, blogs, things that I've tried that have just been horrific. You know what I mean? And it's been years in the making. You know what I mean? I have the opportunity to jump on with you, but 5 years ago, I would have been the person that we were talking about who wouldn't have been able to have any of these conversations.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be willing to follow a lot of this path, and then sit it and stick it out on a long enough time frame to get over the failures, so that you find those successes. Because what most of us aren't attributing to this to is there's a certain amount of luck that gets us to a certain point in time. And most of us don't understand that. And the other piece too is that when we get lucky, the exact same inverse of that is risk, right? And so how do you choose to measure both? But you just need to be able to take as many shots at goal so that you even those things out. And that's what you're looking at across a long enough time frame, is that you'll find success because you're eventually going to negate those two things. But most of us will only take a shot once, fail, and then not go again.
Yeah, and decide that's too far to go again. There's a book by a guy called Randy Pash called The Last Lecture. One of my game-changing books early in the piece in my 20s. He passed away. He was a lecturer, and in America you get to do a last lecture, and they didn't actually know he was dying of pancreatic cancer, but he got offered to do this last lecture. So you don't have to do it on what you actually normally teach. You can do it on anything you're passionate about, anything you want to talk about. And he's got these key things. I thoroughly recommend reading it. But one thing he said was, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And it's something that's just always stayed there. And Oprah Winfrey just got quoted for that actually the other day. And I was like, whoa. That was totally Randy Pash 10 years ago. But his book is beautiful. And I recommend that to so many people, because the life lessons he learned, and it was pretty much gumption and being tenacious. He wanted to make a ride at Disney. Totally not in his wheelhouse of what he was, doing. And he went to his first boss and was like, so this is what I want to do. And the guy goes, no. He was like, okay. And then he was like, nah, there was this itch. And he was like, nah, I'm not quite done there yet. And so he went back to the next boss, and he's like, so this is what I want to do. And he goes, look, I have no idea, Randy, why you're standing here. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you clearly are passionate about it. So I'm here. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do. And he got to go to Disney for a year and build a ride, and be part of this team. And he's magical. He was a really, really
amazing. So Randy, what was his last name?
Randy Pash, Pausch. But you can watch his actual last lecture on YouTube, and it's stunning, because obviously his wife knows he's not well. And she's there. I got goosebumps. It's very, very powerful. It's very old, but watch it. It's very.
I'm surprised I haven't. Yeah,
very
awesome.
Cool. Yeah,
a few things today. Again, some really
just dishing it out.
I love it.
My bill later. No. So around environment, it's our last one. We talk about environment in lots of different ways, and you can talk about the sustainable environment. You can talk about our work environments, our home environments. But what I would be remiss to not do with you today is talk about leadership and environments, and the environments we create around ourselves, because I think we'll have some magic things for leaders and I believe we're all leaders. I don't care what role you actually have in a business. I think we all have an opportunity to be leaders in any part of a business. So I'm really keen to hear what values you hold and what values you put out in your leadership with your team, and what you're expecting, and how you're building those really positive environments that foster wellness.
Yeah. So there's a great quote, and I think it is actually it would be a Tim Ferriss one, but he talks about your life can be measured by the amount of hard conversations you're willing to have. And most of us need to have hard conversations almost on a daily basis, because we either get into a pattern, or we have some form of error that's going to pull us off track. And so you need to have a hard conversation to get back on track. And the first thing that we talk about inside of K&J and for Rugby Bricks is candor. So can you actually be candid with someone and then still be able to support them when you're being candid? And so that's the first piece that we always look at as a leader, is you can say that for your people, but you also have to do it yourself. And a lot of the time now, I've getting better and better at this. Like the first few years I was doing it was terrible. I don't want to admit I was failing in front of people. And then now it's cool. I completely screwed up. And there's a good example campaign that we're running, which has got a few couple 100K behind it. And I just chose the wrong influencer to be the right face of it. And that was completely on me. The decision was there. And the data was coming in, and like everyone knew at that stage, it was like, this was a bad decision. And the person who knew the most was me. Yeah. And so, we could have let the campaign run, and it had another couple of months to go, and we could have stopped it there and then. But we couldn't stop it early, or we could let it go to the end of the month and find out if it was going to go through. All the signs when we knew it was bad and it was going to be the case. So I immediately came into the meeting, but no one had the opportunity to want to call it out. You have to do it yourself. And so I said, hey, look, team, I made the gut call on this. It was definitely the wrong one. I've got to own that, but I now need your help to get back to this. And this is the hard conversation of, one, I've screwed up. Two, I've screwed up and I've made it hard for you now as well, because you're going to have to work to find some holes or fix the holes that I've made. Yeah. But we're going to need to do it as a group. But the first piece of owning it and then actually coming back, that's the other one. And so we look at that candor, and that's the environment we want to build first. The next one is being iterative. So inside of K&J and Rugby Bricks, people get paid learning hours. So if you work for us full time, you get 4 paid learning hours. So whether that's your MBA or, our whole team, actually, it's funny, we're a marketing agency, but I think there's one person who has a marketing background. Everyone else is either like their personal trainers, there's someone with an MBA, we've got people who have PhDs, we've got a whole range of, one of them's an epidemiologist, but none of them are actual marketers. Yeah. And it's getting paid to do some of those things, but we have what's called our learnings channel. And then each week we have our first week meeting, but every person who goes through is personal and professional best. So what did you get personally best last week? What did you do professionally? And what did you learn? And it can be from any field, but ultimately what we look at here is we encourage it in the fact that if you've learned something, share it with the team and then see how it applies. And that's a really big piece, because once you're candid, if you're open about it, it's then got to be iterative, because you're going to continue to make the same mistakes. So you have to learn from the mistakes that you make. And that's the other piece that we go through. And then when we look at these other parts of how we go through and build the rest of the team, is if you're willing to learn and you're willing to be honest, there's really very few things you can't solve. And if you get those 2 parts right, then everything else sort of flows on from it. And the biggest piece for us and how we look at it is admitting it, learning from it, and then tracking it. And so each of those things is sort of how we look at it and what we're trying to do. And then we've got a learnings channel where at the end of the day, whatever it is, you can pop in a doc. And for me, I do a daily review. And whatever I read that day, I'll write up a learning so it's digestible for someone else. It automatically gets fed into our Slack channel and then just goes through after I've entered it from a doc into there, and it just pops up. And so all of our team do that. Yeah. And, there's a whole range of things that you get to see or learn from. But the biggest piece is that it allows you to be a really fast moving organization. Yeah. Because whether the stuff that someone's learning is about leadership, through to landing pages and how they convert better, right through to someone who's an epidemiologist and talking about what they learned in the lab, there's a whole range of that stuff for the day that fills a feed, but then gives you places to then launch off of and then actually continue to iterate. So that's how we think about environment. And for me, that's the part there is like all those things have to come together. And if those two parts have to really come together, because if they don't, you can't move quick enough, but then you also can't learn from your errors.
Yeah. We, with netball, we talk about above the line, below the line behaviors, and like above is open to learning, give me more, and also owning your failures. So own where you are. When you're below it, you're going, I know everything. I know it all. I don't need to know anymore. And that wasn't me. That was totally her. Like whatever the mistake was, like I was part of it, but actually like the original decision maker was like over there at night, And so we talk about above and below the line, but we also talk about, we're all going to go below. Like we're humans and that happens. How fast can you move yourself back up into that above the line, into that sort of green mindset rather than red? And that's the powerful thing. And that's the awareness and I think that's great. If that's the thing your team values and that's the environment of learning, that's absolute gold. And so many more organizations and people just in general need to do that. Like, it's part of our wellness to learn, to understand something new. And like I've been challenging myself to read things that I don't necessarily agree with, or listen to podcasts that are not necessarily in my train of thought, because I call it perspectacles, but it's putting perspectives on and seeing the world just differently. I haven't grown up the same as everybody else, and just trying to understand and experience things differently, and try and be a bit of empathetic to that, but learn as much as you can at the same time.
And that is so critical, right? Because those are the things there that you have. And the last piece is, out of all of this, is how do you continually improve the value of your time? And those two things are prerequisites to improving the value of your time, because what we want to do is, once you've got candid and then you're able to learn and iterate, what you do is you're able to increase your accountability. I can take more on, and then I can outsource the other stuff. And a lot of our team, we only work 36 hours a week, but our goal is to sort of say, okay, cool, I have a limited amount of hours. How do I either outsource or create education that then makes me move to more valuable tasks? And the last piece of the learning, so you can go through it, is that if you're increasing the value of your time, you get to think about better things and opening your perspective for that. And that piece there, I quite like it, spectacles is a great way of doing that. And so your perspective gets better as you free up that time to work on more of the high value or the higher thinking things that come with it.
Nice. I can't claim perspectives. I better put a caveat in there. Sasha Coburn is an amazing businesswoman and lawyer, but she owns Coffee Culture, the coffee. And she was the one, she did a talk in a leadership program I was a part of a few years ago, and this perspectives thing came, and I was like, oh my God, I'm absorbing that and using it everywhere. And it's an actual thing. Check out Word Hippo, they're the definition team.
Nice.
Not everywhere, but it is somewhere. And it's slapping on perspectives with seeing the world as differently as you can and being accepting, which is pretty powerful. Instead of we can often go gung-ho into a situation and see it the way we see it, but the same way I see a situation, you never will. And I think that's the most powerful thing. Like when you report on a situation that's happened, whether it was a altercation or just a discussion about something, I will take away something totally different than the person who literally saw it with me, because they've grown up differently, they've had different experiences in life. So what I think may not have been confrontational to them may have been, or could have been too soft, just however that goes. But I think that's a pretty powerful thing to remember, that we never ever see the same as the next person, because we're all so different.
And it's amazing. Like, I enjoy that a lot, because obviously it's the two same people will witness the event, and their interpretation is completely different. It's working.
Right, that is us for our 5 pillars. Can't believe, I'm really sad that it's actually all done, but now I have quick fire questions for you, Kale.
Excellent. Hit me.
All right, 3 things that made you smile today.
Leah, my partner, the word dump that I did before that I said back to you, and then the most of this interview. I think it's been excellent.
Nice. Favorite books? This is a loaded question for you.
Yes, I've got tattooed on my arm, The Obstacle is the Way, if you can see it. So that book by Ryan Holiday, 4 Hour Work Week, is a great one. And I can see a few through here, but I'll go 3 that really stick out. When, which is a great one by Daniel Pink. It just talks about timing and how to do things. Another one that was really great for me was Loon Shots, and that's by Safi Bakali. And then the last one that I've really enjoyed lately, but have been getting more into, and these types of books are biographies, and it's Edison's biography. So
nice. That would be
those have been really high level.
3 favorite smells.
3 favorite smells. Seawater, Central Otago. So like as you drive back home, like Alexandra, for anyone who's from there or knows there, like there's a certain smell that you get when you come through there. And then probably the last one, I think, is brownie. Like brownie's amazing.
I love that you talk about that and being such a healthy, fit man. That's great. There's great balance. What makes you laugh?
Look, I'm a huge fan of really like odd, dry wit. For anyone who knows, so I've got the blog Hakune, but my friend Reese Jeffrey, like him on Twitter, like if you ever want just to go see someone be dry and sarcastic, like I just jump on his Twitter feed and watch him reply and burn people, and it's actually really good. So his method of comedy is actually quite good for me.
I love that. First job.
Checkout chick. I was at New World, so I was 12. And I was lucky and I snuck in. I said I was 13 because they wouldn't let you work then, but I said I was 13.
Nice. Go-to pick-me-up songs that lift and fill your soul.
Yeah, I've got 3 that I was listening to just prior to this. I had a campaign spin it hard, but one is Work by Britney Spears, I think.
Yeah.
It's actually called Work Bitch. So that one there, Industry by Little Nas X. And then I've got another one, which is called Attack by Danny Brown. So all sort of hip hop, all pop. But they get me, like, puts me into a frame where, like, cool, I listen to these and I feel like I'm ready to work.
Yeah, I like that. Hobbies.
Yeah, I've got a few. Reading, and I don't know if it's a hobby, more of a close, if I could make it a vocation, I would. But I think, reading is a huge one. Tennis, touch, any form of sport is like there, but those are sort of the ones that I'm primarily into. And then the last one that I'm slowly getting better at and doing more of, I used to do a lot, but is drawing. I used to do a lot of drawing when I was younger, but I still love it. So trying to get a bit more into that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Put some up so I can see them. Qualities you love about yourself.
Learning. So I like that I'm iterative. I've now become studious, I think, is the identity that I've got to. And then the other piece that I'm consistently working on that is still good, but being someone who is candid. Those are the things that I really have been proud of when I look at doing my weekly, monthly, 90-day reviews, daily reviews. Yeah. Those are the stuff that I look at and I'm like, cool, I can tick most of the boxes on this thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Travel life hacks, since you're one of our travelers.
Oh man, where do we start? I guess the first one that I use is getting acclimated to another time zone. So you've got 3 hours. I'm about to go to LA. So they're a day behind us, but 3 hours ahead. So today, right now, so if it's 2:38 there, it's 5:38 now.
Yeah.
The piece that you do when you're going through there is set yourself up 4 days beforehand. And so for each day that you have that you're traveling where an hour's difference, then you can need that to acclimate. So first thing is I'll wake my day up for the 3 hours earlier and use blue light, because typically if I was to wake up here at that time, it's going to be 5. So use a blue light exposure, which is closest thing you get to the sun when you don't have it. And that's the thing there that I use. And I'll do that for the first 4 days so that when I land, I'm pretty much there. So some good science behind it. And there's a guy who does ophthalmology. His name's Andrew Huberman. You've probably heard of him, Huberman Labs, but there's some really great tools, but that's one of them that I use to get prepped. So like when I hit a place, I'm not gassed.
Backwards on the back foot. Yeah. That's epic travel life hack. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kale. And I know that so many people are going to get so many amazing tidbits out of this, both for wellness, but also from leadership and how to take care of their people and set people up to succeed and have good conversations, because that's half of that psychological safety stuff. And Carol is a very big advocate, obviously, for that too, who we've talked to too. But thank you so much. And no doubt we will see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And it's very similar to what I said about the things that made me smile. This podcast has been a really great one. So thank you for all that you share with me as well. And privileged to be here.
Thank you.